You wake to the sound of steel being sharpened in the pre-dawn darkness of the Tower of London. May 19th, 1536 AD. The rhythmic scraping of whetstone against blade slices through the morning mist like a fatal whisper, each pass deliberate, unyielding, inevitable. You are the once Queen of England, and in mere hours, that blade will cleave your head from your body. The cold stone walls of your cell seem to throb with your pulse as you perch on the edge of your sparse bed. Your fingers tremble, not from the chill, but from the crushing certainty of the end. Beyond your barred window, the carpenter's hammers ring out, assembling the scaffold that will become the theater of your last act. Every strike reverberates in your marrow, a relentless countdown to annihilation that has unfolded over agonizing weeks. Your ladies-in-waiting glide through the room like specters, their visages wan and etched with sorrow. They attire you in a somber gray damask gown edged with fur, a crimson kirtle beneath symbolizing martyrdom and innocence. You ponder the bitter irony. Henry selected these hues himself, even in your demise, scripting you as the contrite harlot rather than the betrayed consort. The tower's air hangs heavy with the dank odor of the Thames mud and collective despair. But this dawn, it's laced with an undercurrent of dread, the acrid tang of apprehension, and the faint, cloying aroma of incense, wafting from the chapel, where masses are intoned for your eternal rest. You catch the low hum of voices outside your door, the scuff of boots, the rattle of chainmail as sentries assume their posts. The apparatus of mortality is in full swing, and you stand as its pivotal element in this meticulously staged nightmare. Before delving into these obscured tales of endurance and anguish, if you relish uncovering the veiled realities of the past, think about tapping that like button and subscribing for similar explorations, and kindly share in the comments where you're tuning in from. It's astonishing how we're united across eras and distances by our mutual intrigue with history. The ordeal, culminating in Anne's beheading, originated not in overt betrayal or infidelity, but in Henry VIII's frantic quest for a son and his escalating fixation on Jane Seymour. By January 1536, Anne endured another miscarriage, this one shattering, coinciding with the funeral of Catherine of Aragon on January 29th, the lost fetus reportedly male, a fact that shadowed her remaining days. Henry, who had shattered ties with Rome and fractured the realm to wed her, murmured that their bond was damned by divine wrath. The doctrinal rationales he wielded to dissolve his union with Catherine now recoiled upon Anne. The cruel symmetry was profound. Yet Henry required more than heavenly disfavor to discard her. He demanded juridical pretexts that preserved his infallibility and the validity of their daughter Elizabeth. Thomas Cromwell, the king's principal advisor, and a figure whose existence hinged on preempting royal desires, fabricated an indictment so intricate and condemnatory that it not only demolished Anne but extinguished any potential compassion toward her. The initial strand Cromwell unraveled was Anne's association with court musician Mark Smeaton. Smeaton embodied contrasts to Henry. Youthful, agile, raven-haired, endowed with a disarming allure that endeared him to the palace women. On April 30th, 1536, Cromwell seized Smeaton and transported him to his residence in Stepney, subjecting the musician to questioning that undoubtedly encompassed torment, though no formal documentation endures of the precise techniques. What emerges is that Smeaton, who first refuted any illicit liaison with the Queen, exited Cromwell's inquisition, prepared to admit not merely adultery with Anne, but explicit particulars that underpin the prosecution against her. The cadence and substance of his admission evoke a soul fractured by torment and horror, desperate to halt the suffering. Armed with Smeaton's testimony, Cromwell expeditiously wove a network of purported accomplices. Henry Norris, the king's groom of the stool and a confidant of over a decade, was apprehended on May Honest amid the May Day festivities at Greenwich Palace. The paradox of detaining Norris during a rite of vernal rebirth escaped no observer, as if Cromwell deliberately tainted every emblem of vitality and merriment. Norris enjoyed unparalleled access to Henry's intimate spheres, his supposed offense transcending mere infidelity to embody supreme disloyalty, the perfidy of a man exalted from obscurity to eminence by the very sovereign he allegedly deceived. In questioning, Norris upheld his blamelessness with unyielding resolve, indicative of either profound integrity or the realization that confession equated to assured demise. Sir William Brereton succeeded Norris in captivity on May 4th. Brereton, a gentleman of the Privy Chamber with Welsh roots and modest origins, relied wholly on monarchical grace for his stature. Like Norris, he faced accusations of adultery with the Queen, but Cromwell layered on further allegations, scheming to assassinate the king, enabling Anne to wed a paramour and govern via a marionette spouse. The most startling detention transpired on May 5th, with Sir Francis Weston, scarcely 25 and newly wedded, hauled to the Tower. Weston's affluent lineage rendered his implication baffling to contemporaries, as he possessed no motive to hazard all for the Queen's regard. His youth and promising future rendered his supposed entanglement in such peril implausible. Yet the crowning arrest, on May 20, jolted the court and unveiled Henry's profound malice. George Boleyn, Anne's sibling and Viscount Rochford, was charged with incest against his sister. The allegation was so abhorrent, so far beyond the bounds of decency even in the ethically pliable Tudor court, that it fulfilled a calculated role, portraying Anne not as a mere strumpet but as a fiend, so corrupt that no retribution sufficed. George Boleyn mirrored his sister's traits, erudite, refined, armed with a keen intellect that rendered him both admired and perilous at court. His unwavering devotion to Anne posed a menace to Henry's dominion. By leveling incest, Cromwell annihilated not just Anne's kin but deterred any advocates, lest they appear to endorse such abomination. The rapidity of these apprehensions, all within 5 days, exposed the meticulously coordinated assault on Anne. This was no incremental revelation of misconduct, but a synchronized dismantling engineered to afford Anne's supporters no opportunity to rally or grasp the unfolding cataclysm. Anne's own seizure occurred on May 20, right after viewing a tennis match at Greenwich Palace, where she had seen Henry compete alongside Francis Weston, the selfsame individual arrested days later as her purported lover. The orchestration was intentional and vicious. Anne's concluding instance of liberty spent observing the king revel with the man accused of cuckolding him. The indictments were proclaimed to her by her uncle, Thomas Howard, Duke of Norfolk, a beneficiary of the Boleyn ascent, who now proclaimed her ruin. Norfolk's complicity underscored the savage arithmetic of Tudor intrigue. Kinship yielded to regal patronage and self-preservation. Witnesses chronicled Anne's response to the accusations, depicting a woman grappling with the enormity of her plight. She reportedly chuckled at the infidelity claims, not in mirth, but at their sheer ludicrousness. The notion of orchestrating numerous trysts amid the court's relentless surveillance, where her every gesture was monitored and logged, bordered on farce. Yet as the accusations breathed dawned adultery with 5 men, incest with her brother, conspiring the king's murder, and scheming to wed a lover post-Henry's demise, Anne's mirth evaporated. She stood accused, not of mere carnal lapses, but of treason, so pervasive it impugned her every tie to throne and entourage. The passage from Greenwich to the Tower mirrored the path of her coronation triumph 3 years prior. Then, throngs had acclaimed her with blossoms. Now, they observed in muted hush as the deposed queen glided past on a guarded barge. The juxtaposition must have been excruciating to traverse the avenue of her zenith, now en route to a bastion whence few departed breathing. At the Tower, Anne was quartered in the identical suites that hosted her pre-coronation vigil, another calculated torment compelling her to confront her precipitous descent. Chambers once adorned for a victorious sovereign now formed an opulent cage, replete with the tapestries and accoutrements that had beheld her pinnacle. Sir William Kingston, the Tower's constable, was tasked with meticulously documenting Anne's utterances and demeanor during confinement. Kingston, a seasoned bureaucrat, grasped that his longevity rested on furnishing superiors with desired intelligence. His dispatches portray Anne as oscillating between defiance and desolation, at times asserting her purity with sovereign poise, at others succumbing to her predicament's burden. A poignant facet of Kingston's logs is Anne's persistent disbelief that Henry would proceed to execution. She voiced assurance in the king's clemency, convinced their matrimony and shared chronicle would tip the scales. This trust in Henry's core benevolence betrays either Anne's misapprehension of her spouse or her mental barricade against reality. The adjudication of Anne's alleged confederates commenced on May 12th, 1536, in Westminster Hall. The hearings exemplified juridical spectacle, crafted not to ascertain culpability but to cloak political liquidation and legality. Evidence against the men was predominantly inferential. Tokens from Anne, dialogues exchanged, attendance at gatherings where impropriety purportedly transpired. Smeaton's avowal anchored the prosecution, yet it proved tenuous. As a lowly minstrel reliant on patronage, the prospect of him jeopardizing all for a royal dalliance strained belief, especially given the dire repercussions. Nevertheless, his torment-derived confession buttressed the conspiracy edifice. Henry Norris, Sir William Brereton, and Sir Francis Weston steadfastly denied guilt, spurning leniency offers for admissions. Their tenacity amid doom implies extraordinary valor or authentic virtue, or both. These were individuals with much to forfeit and naught to gain by shielding a condemned queen. George Boleyn's separate trial, befitting his aristocracy, proved the most theatrical. A skilled rhetorician and jurist, George defended himself with eloquence that swayed observers and momentarily unsettled the jury. For a fleeting interval, one conspirator appeared poised to elude Cromwell's snare, but George committed a grievous blunder, exposing either political naivete or fervent zeal to exonerate his sister. Presented a confidential query to peruse silently, he vocalized it court-wide. It pertained to Henry's rumored impotence and incapacity to gratify Anne. Such incendiary intelligence doomed George irrespective of veracity. The judgments were predestined. Norris, Weston, Brereton, and Smeaton were convicted and condemned to the traitor's fate. Hanging, drawing, and quartering, George Boleyn, nobility affording him axe over gibbet, faced decapitation. The proceedings' haste and uniformity clarified their essence as exigency, not equity. Henry's disposition toward the doomed illuminated his calibrated ruthlessness. He mitigated the commoner's penalties to mere beheading, a proclaimed benevolence that forestalled the grotesque dismemberment apt to evoke pity. On May 17th, 1536, 5 souls perished on Tower Hill for their supposed entanglements with Anne Boleyn. Mark Smeaton, whose testimony ignited the inferno, ascended the scaffold affirming culpability perhaps from remorse, a bid to shield kin, or a psyche shattered by anguish. Henry Norris, Sir William Brereton, and Sir Francis Weston proclaimed innocence unto death, their valedictions duly noted by chroniclers cognizant of the epical gravity. George Boleyn's demise resonated most profoundly. As Anne's sibling and staunchest ally, his loss symbolized the obliteration of a dynasty that had soared and plummeted. His parting oration, delivered with the oratory that once endeared him to Henry, brimmed with grace and reiterated purity. Anne, sequestered in her tower lodgings, would have discerned the clamor of her accused paramour's executions, the assembling multitudes, the axe's descent, the throng's approving clamor. The mental anguish of comprehending men had forfeited life due to fabricated liaisons with her, must have verged on intolerable. Concurrently, Henry advanced with emblematic alacrity and indifference. Prior to Anne's hearing, he orchestrated his nuptials with Jane Seymour, the demure, flaxen antithesis to Anne's ebony passion and cerebral fire. Where Anne challenged and invigorated, Jane embodied acquiescence and ornamental wifedom. Anne's tribunal unfolded on May 15th, 1536, within the Tower's Grand Hall. The venue was tactical. Confining proceedings to the fortress precluded public rallies for her while imposing the citadel's ominous aura. The spectacle epitomized Tudor pomp and legal farce. Anne entered clad in ebony velvet, mourning's shade underscoring her degradation, flanked by her attendants permitted as solace and overseers to chronicle her conduct. Thomas Howard, Duke of Norfolk, Anne's kin, oversaw as Lord High Steward. his condemnation of his niece vividly illustrating Tudor pragmatism, where blood bowed to throne and endurance. The indictments were recited exhaustively, each more incendiary. Adultery with Henry Norris on October 12th, 1533, at Westminster. With Sir William Brereton on November 16th, 1533, at Greenwich. With Mark Smeaton on April 19th, 1534, at Whitehall. With Sir Francis Weston on June 20th, 1534, at Hampton Court. The precision of dates and venues aimed to bolster authenticity, yet betrayed contrivance too impeccable for prosecutors craving conviction. The incest with George dated to October 31st, 1535, at Whitehall, post her recent miscarriage, implying not impulse but premeditated intrigue, aligning Cromwell's depiction of a queen beyond redemption. Gravest was the treason, envisioning Henry's demise and vowing to espouse a lover thereafter. This necessitated capital reprisal, framing her sins as state perils, not private frailties. Anne's retort to the allegations was scrutinized and preserved. Accounts depict her preserving equanimity amid the recitation, her countenance, a veil of regal detachment masking inner turmoil. Afforded rebuttal, she repudiated all with resoluteness that disquieted adversaries. Her advocacy was hamstrung by era's strictures. As female and vassal, she summoned no witnesses, interrogated no accusers, retained no counsel. The forum was rigged for foreordained doom. Anne enacted as culprit in a ritual presuming guilt. Prosecution hinged on attestations from domestics and nobles alleging dubious conduct or eavesdropped indiscretions. Much was nebulous and conjectural. A gaze, a secluded exchange, bestowals between queen and supposed suitors. The case leaned on insinuation and palace rumor. A damning deposition stemmed from the deceased Lady Rochford, George's spouse, who imputed Anne's misconduct but eluded scrutiny in death. Employing unchallengeable spectral evidence signaled the accuser's zeal to forge a persuasive narrative. The trial's velocity astonished even Tudor norms. The full prosecution, deliberation, and resolution transpired in one session, affording scant interval for evidentiary scrutiny or robust counter. This urgency mirrored Henry's impatience to advance his Seymour alliance and curtail public sentiment's coalescence for Anne. As jurors withdrew for verdict, suspense was illusory. The 26 nobles adjudicating encompassed Henry's beneficiaries, aware their prospects pivoted on delivering the craved outcome. Among them, erstwhile allies now compelled to denounce her for salvation. Norfolk proclaimed guilt with evident agitation, whether grief or alleviation, at discharging odious obligation, ambiguous. Sentence: demise by combustion or decapitation, at royal whim. Burning evoked medieval chastisement for female traitors, especially spousal betrayers. Beheading posed as lenity, averting a queen's pyre spectacle. Anne absorbed condemnation with chronicled serenity, upholding queenly decorum amid extinction. Her reply beseeched divine grace for the king and reaffirmed innocence, echoing through the hall with resonance that stirred foes. Yet her secluded intervals, logged by Sir William Kingston and attendants, unveiled the ordeal's toll. In the span between verdict and blade, Anne vacillated from optimism to abyss, certitude to dread. Exposing confinement's psychic scourge, she clung to hopes of Henry's pardon, persuaded their chronicle and erstwhile ardor would prevail. This optimism, in retrospect, appears poignant tragedy, given Henry's chronicle with discarded consorts. Anne's denial may have constituted a psychic bulwark, preserving reason amid shattering trials. The enigma of Anne's veritable culpability or purity has captivated scholars for nigh 5 centuries. Indictments rested on peripheral proof and declarations from parties whose fates hinged on gratifying the crown. Smeaton's torment yielded admission cornerstone, yet such extractions were infamously dubious even then. Specified tryst dates pose quandaries. Records indicate Anne gravid or postpartum during many, rendering multiple affairs logistically improbable. Moreover, royal consorts' ceaseless oversight, made clandestine romances perilously conspicuous. The indictment's swift assembly and hearing's celerity imply orchestrated finale over impartial probe. Cromwell's proficiency in case construction was admirable, yet suspect evidence unearthed or invented. Most compellingly, Barr tormented Smeaton. No paramour confessed, despite commutation incentives. Men confronting oblivion had motive to admit if culpable, yet elected terminal denial. Anne's downfall's geopolitical backdrop bolsters exculpation. By 1536, Henry's heir desperation peaked. Seymour courtship underway. Anne's January miscarriage nullified her utility, morphing her from asset to impediment. Henry's temperament, manifest in consort and rival disposals, bespeaks a sovereign adept at eradicating obstacles. His Rome rupture to claim Anne evinced relentlessness. Her annihilation when obsolete mirrored that ferocity inverted. Yet culpability queries transcend explicit charges to Anne's ethos. Chronicles paint her as astute, aspirant, politically shrewd, yet occasionally haughty and retaliatory toward foes. Her handling of Catherine and Mary garnered court antagonists eager for her ruin. Anne's acerbic wit, initially enchanting Henry, perhaps soured as wedlock waned. Her propensity to contest the king defied consort conventions, fueling his resentment. Her bond with George stirred whispers. Absent incest substantiation beyond sibling solidarity in perilous politics. Their affinity likely familial alliance, misconstrued by malice seekers. As Anne anticipated the blade in the tower, Henry primed his successor union. On May 17th, Archbishop Thomas Cranmer annulled the Boleyn marriage at Lambeth Palace. This haste betrayed Henry's zeal to surmount barriers to Seymour. Nullification invoked akin theology to Catherine's, union invalid ab initio. For Anne, Henry cited prior liaison with her sister Mary as prohibitive affinity, deeming marriage incestuous. The paradox was sublime, alleging Anne's marital adultery while contending no marriage subsisted. Logic secondary to expedience. Invalidation dethroned Anne retroactively, bastardizing Elizabeth. Learning her union's erasure must have devastated Anne, effacing not mere matrimony, but her queenship essence, reducing her to king's concubine, progeny delegitimized, life's labors voided. Meanwhile, execution logistics advanced with Tudor precision. Henry atypically summoned a Calais swordsman over English axemen, sword touted as compassionate swifter, surer than axe's hack. Foreign executor distanced Henry, framing demise as juridical imperative, not vendetta, while preempting local reluctance or bias. The blade itself became fixation and terror in Anne's waning days. Unlike the axe's heft, the sword was slender, keen, engineered for accuracy over force concealed till climax, amplifying psychic strain. Anne's terminal conduct bespoke a woman striving for poise and lucidity amid obliteration. Kingston's missives depict her variably resolute and shattered, invoking divine vindication, while arranging pragmatics with clarity acknowledging finality. A heart-rending element was her fret for toddler Elizabeth. At under 3, the child comprehended naught, but Anne acutely sensed her execution orphaned and delegitimized her heir. Visitation pleas rebuffed, compounding cruelty. Attendants, retained as companions and monitors, navigated impossible duality, consoling the doomed while safeguarding stations. The eve preceding execution, Anne devoted hours to devotion and introspection, steeling her spirit for divine reckoning. Accounts portray her serene, reconciled to Henry's mercilessness and doom's inescapability. She also addressed execution pragmatics with aids, attire, scaffold deportment. Even terminal, Anne grasped her performative role. Final instance dissected for contrition or rebellion. May 19, 1536, broke gray and clammy, the haze mirroring the tower's pall. Anne, roused early, scant slumber claimed, commencing rites for mortality. She donned gray damask, fur-trimmed, crimson kirtle evoking innocence and sacrifice. Hair, once captivating Henry, simply bound under linen coif facilitating the stroke. Practicalities infiltrated these valedictory choices, reminding she prepared not for gala, but extinction. Her ultimate repast, bread, wine more sacramental than sustenance, communion with existence, ere transcendence. As dawn advanced, Anne perceived external preparations. Scaffold finalized overnight, laborers scattering straw for blood, mobs amassed early, lured by a queen's unprecedented demise. While executions entertained Tudor masses, a consort's beheading shattered precedent. Tower Green brimmed with nobles once courting her grace, traders profiting her patronage, populace riveted by regal saga. Some attended curiosity-driven, others duty-bound, still others compelled by morbidity. Sir William Kingston arrived with execution summons, demeanor deferential, yet inexorable, escorting royalty to doom while enforcing edict. Anne met him with poise, rising, adjusting garb, affirming readiness. Her aplomb extraordinary, absent anticipated collapse. The procession from quarters to scaffold perhaps Anne's lengthiest odyssey. Each stride distanced vitality, neared enigma. Path wound through courtyards of erstwhile queenship, past edifices of exercised sway. Contrast with prior eminence, likely harrowing. Stones echoing past adulation now witnessed her terminus. Tower, coronation prelude, now annihilation arena. Emerging on Tower Green, hush enveloped the assembly. A queen's death march so anomalous, so jarring, even calloused viewers muted. She who rivaled Henry's might, reduced to felon nearing end. Scaffold. Modest platform. Elevated modestly for visibility. Intimate versus grandiose for males. Executioner awaited. Hooded. Alien, attire enigmatic. Sword veiled in straw, denying premature glimpse. Anne ascended steadily, aides assisting. On platform, she addressed the throng per trader custom. Extant accounts vary, phrasing, essence, loyalty to king, fate acceptance, soul prayers, striking omission, no overt innocence claim, no Henry assault, perhaps resignation, Elizabeth safeguard, or depletion. Speech concluded, she shed headdress, jewels entrusting to ladies, divesting earthly emblems, pragmatic and emblematic, departing as Anne Boleyn, unadorned. Ladies blindfolded her white, sparing blades approach, ensuring immobility lest botch quickness. Blindfolded, Anne knelt at block, posture dignified, mindful of legacy image. Executioner advanced noiselessly, sword unveiled, elongated, razor, edged for singular precision exotic in English milieu. Subsequent instant eternally dissected, he elevated blade, descending in blur many missed. Anne Boleyn's head parted cleanly, testament to Calais mastery. Crowd's response, awed quiet, then gasps, invocations, murmurs, witnessing queenly execution overwhelmed, defying comprehension. Some signed crosses, murmured for her essence. Others gawked, transfixed. Executioner's deftness, mercy, and atrocity. Instantaneous end spared axes bungles, yet velocity underscored irrevocability. One breath alive, next corpse. Anne's attendants, tears streaming, tendered final rite. Shrouding head and form in linen, maternal care for fallen mistress. Grief authentic, loyalty enduring amid peril. Multitude dispersed swiftly, as if fleeing witnessed enormity. Queenly execution challenging divine monarchy. Hours post, Henry progressed unabated. He wed Jane Seymour privately. May 30th, 1536, 11 days hence. Transition's pace exposed eagerness to enter Anne's chapter, commencing anew with pliant spouse. Yet Henry's expungement faltered. Elizabeth, bastardized, endured to reign magnificently. Woman he raised for heir, immortalized via denied progeny. Co-executed faded swiftly, names tethered to Anne's lore. Smeaton, Norris, Brereton, Weston, George Boleyn, sacrificed for Henry's marital reset. Demises cautioned against regal proximity or fallen alliance. Cromwell, architect, served till 1540 execution, reminder of dispensability. Anne's ruin haunted participants. Cranmer voiced qualms. Norfolk upheld verdict publicly, perhaps privately rueful. Execution's ramifications transcended politics, shaping Henry's consort handling, fostering terror in reign's twilight. Renaissance prince morphed to tyrant, slaying wife for lust. Abroad, outrage. Henry tyrant, isolating Protestant England from Catholic fold. Yet amid calculations, human toll paramount. Woman second to king, reduced to scaffold remnant. Life forfeit to spouse's whims and frailties. Tower, staging Anne's end, persisted in regal theatrics centuries on. But May 1536's misty morn lingers in masonry, a memento of favor's cost, power's peril. Anne's interment hasty, undignified. Elm arrow chest, consigned to St. Peter ad Vincula Chapel sans rite, or marker queen anonymized. Site ironic, shared with brother. Co-accused repository for regal casualties. Post-execution, court resumed with grotesque normalcy. Sycophants pivoted to Seymour. Governance churned as if queenly beheading routine. Beneath facade, trauma echoed. Blindfolded queen kneeling. Poise amid doom, haunting witnesses eternally. Henry's psyche speculative. Outward, unrepentant, matrimonial zeal. Yet frantic erasure, portraits raised, initials effaced. Arms supplanted suggests guilt evasion. Systematic obliteration, as if expunging traces undid deed. History preserves what despots erase. Anne's saga endured in memories, whispers, legends of audacious challenger paying ultimate toll. Execution pivoted Henry's rule. English chronicle, regal might annihilating intimates. Precedents for queens. Foes, she who redirected nations' faith, reduced to ambition's parable. Favors volatility, as May 19, 1536, dusk fell, tower hushed. Scaffold disassembled, throng vanished, traces effaced, but repercussions molded generations. Woman dawn risen to blades wet now rested. Strife with Henry, court ceased. Keen steel fulfilled grim duty. Muting voice that swayed sovereigns, altered realms. In ensuing gloom, as wardens patrolled in river-lapped walls, Anne Boleyn's specter commenced history's haunt. Erased officially, she persisted in recollections, historian queries, myth of queen defying king, life bartered for daring. Steel's sharpening heralded final dawn. Post-execution silence sealed Tudor annals' tragic epoch. In that gravid quiet, Anne Boleyn's execution's true terror unveiled. Not woman's demise, but possibilities slain. Alternate futures crushed, fear's victory over aspiration in Tudor England's blood-drenched domain.